afternoon or evening. My name's Emile Rudisell. I'm one of the project coordinators with Forge, and we're here this evening to talk about tools for de-escalation during a mental health crisis and actions that we can all take to help. So we've got about an hour and a half together. We're in webinar mode, so your cameras and microphones are off. You can settle in however you want. We will be using different things to interact so that you're not just hearing my ideas tonight, but we get to hear from all of us. And again, thank you for being here. As we get started, we are going to be talking about different types of crisis that people experience, our own mental health and the mental health of those in our communities and our loved ones. So please take care of yourself throughout. This might look like getting cozy and comfortable. This might look like stepping away from the computer. We are recording. So if you leave, you can come back and watch the recording later. If you miss something, you can watch it. Participation is totally optional. Share in the chat. Hello to everyone who's saying hi there. You can contribute. We'll have questions and things like that for you, but it's a choice. And we will have the PowerPoint and the recording available for you after this. So you'll be able to look back on things. If it helps you to take notes, great. If it helps you to just focus, that's great too. A little bit about Forge for those of you who are joining us for the first time. Forge is 29 years old now, and it's a trans-led organization doing anti-violence work nationally. So Forge started in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1994, doing a lot of work with local trans folks around sexual violence and domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and since expanded scope to support service providers who work with trans communities. And that's now about 3/4 of our work is doing training and technical assistance to help service providers really support trans and non-binary survivors. We're national in scope, so we've got folks on both coasts and in the middle of the country. I am joining y'all from Florida today, so you'll probably see my lighting change as the sun sets. And welcome to those of you all over the place. I see we've got US and Canada represented so far. Thank you for being here. Our guiding principles at Forge are that we are trauma-informed and empowerment-based. And to do that, all of our work needs to be culturally responsive. So that really connects these two principles together. Trauma-informed means that we look at and seek to understand the ways that trauma affects individuals and communities, and think about how we can create spaces, trainings, and work with people understanding some of those effects and trying to avoid increasing the harm that trauma can cause. And empowerment really looks at that people know what they need, and we want to support choice and agency and highlight resilience and bring in all of the knowledge and strengths that people have. So we hope that this training will be empowering and will focus on lots of things and how to take those skills maybe to the next steps. And all of that is, again, looking through a lens of culture and how that impacts all of our lives and work. So with that little bit about us, I want to tell you what you can expect from the next hour and 25 minutes. We're going to do a little bit around self-awareness and how we check in with ourselves, which is something that can be really useful before crisis happens or before we respond to one. Recognizing crisis, I've used that word a dozen times already. What does it mean? How do we increase support and safety for those of us, ourselves, our loved ones, our community members, people we work with during crisis? And then some of the sort of like big picture tools that can help us both in the moment, but also overall to de-escalate crisis, building community, thinking about things from the lens of the long haul, and what happens when our whole community is impacted. So we've got some big concepts and some specific tips for different types of crises built into this. And again, interaction is optional. I love it. I love an active chat, which we already have. So that is one great place to talk to each other, to talk to me. And Caleb, who just posted in the chat, is going to be kind of my backup tech support and help me keep track of everything that's going on in there. So Caleb will be hopping on sometimes to share some of what y'all are saying out loud. There's also a Q&A function. If you want to use that, you can submit questions that we'll hopefully get to work in the answers to throughout the training or at the end. And then we've got a Padlet. We're not going to use it yet, but I want to show you how it works. So Caleb dropped the link in the chat, and he'll do that again every time it comes up. But when you go to that link, you'll see a page like this, and it's off to my side, so I'm going to look at it. If you click the little plus button, you can add a post, and you can write whatever you want. But ideally, you'll be writing the answer to one of our discussion questions. And at the bottom of this little pop-up, you can change which discussion question you're answering. So we'll go in order. And you can also do fun things like change the color. You can upload, a photo, an appropriate photo. If the question is something like, what are your reactions to crisis? And you want to show listening, you want to show an ear, you want to show, watching someone sign, things like that. You can do that. So that's, those are our tools. If Padlet feels like too much for you, you can just answer questions in the chat and talk there too. So we'll be helping you navigate that. And our first question is just for the chat. You've already talked about where you're from. Welcome to everyone. I love if people who feel comfortable could share in the chat one thing that you find comforting. It could be a sight, a sound, a smell, a taste, or a touch. So I'm really looking for one of your 5 senses. What do you find comforting? And Caleb, now that we have a few, do you want to hop on and give us a sample of them?
Sure. See a lot of rain, hot tea, the smell of campfire, essential oils, soft music, a huge blanket, a hug. Let's see. Waves, warm sunlight. Oh my gosh, there's so many of these. My cat, very soft. More blankets.
These are great. Thank you. And you can keep them coming if we didn't get to yours yet. One thing we can do is kind of compile things, and we'll take your names off of them so people can see. I invite you, even if you don't want to share it with us, to just keep in mind whatever it is that you shared that you find comforting too. And if you at some point feel overwhelmed or anxious or any other feeling that needs some soothing for you tonight, see if you can think about or remember that thing that finds you comfort. If it's something physically near you, that's awesome. I saw weighted blankets and petting your pets. If that's something you can do during the webinar, great. Or maybe just remembering a smell, a sound can be helpful. You're muted if you want to play background music, go for it. So thank you all for sharing those. So we are going to turn inwards first. We looked some at what we find comforting. And when I think about de-escalating crisis, one thing that's really important to me is figuring out where I'm at in terms of what support I can provide, what I'm feeling, what my reactions are, and kind of just doing a quick check-in with myself. So what I want to do is I'm going to give you a short scenario, like 2 sentences, and I want you to notice the first thought, feeling, or impulse that comes to you, so that it can be whatever comes up for you. I need to fix it, run away, fear, joy, anything like that. These scenarios, they're not very detailed, but they are about the possibility of an impending crisis. So if you don't want to listen to it, now's a good time to go get that cup of tea. And then you'll answer this question of what comes up for you in the Padlet. So I'll bring the Padlet up in just a second, but you can pull it up too. So you're exhausted after a long day. You look at your phone and see dozens of missed calls and texts. Most of them are from a friend you know has been having a hard time recently, but some are from mutual friends. So if you feel comfortable in the Padlet or in the chat, share what's your first reaction if that happened to you. Caleb, do you want to share some of these that are coming in?
Yeah. I see anxiety, concern, likely fear, ground myself, a deep breath, panic, fast heart racing, concern, also panic. I would want to call that friend immediately. I would be scared. I'd be worried. Take a deep breath and check to see if I have the space right now. Heart starts beating faster. I need to learn more about what's happening. An initial sense of overwhelm, stress, wondering what would be helpful. Find out what's happening, then process my feelings and solutions in whatever order is appropriate. Guilt because I have no spoons left to give. Explain that I might not have the spoons to be there for them. Ask if they have someone else to be with them. Overwhelm. I might need to wait until I've done some calming and decompression so that I can show up better when I open the messages.
Thank you all
Wow.
for responding. We probably won't get to read all of them. And you have the Padlet, so you can also scroll through. I heard a lot of worry, right? Understandable what's happening. A couple things that you stood out. This one, feeling a little defensive. One person said jumping into caretaker mode, or I gotta go, and figure it out. And I appreciate that time we take to step in and say, what's happening for me right now? Because we often bring that into the crisis with us. And several of y'all gave tips already of like, what can I do about this? Take a deep breath, ground yourself, notice your feelings, and that can really help us to show up. Noticing things like defensiveness or a feeling of wanting to back away from the friend, a feeling of wanting to save or rescue the friend, all of those kinds of things we want to be aware of as we bring them in. A lot of these responses, that first immediate impact, can be stuff that we were taught throughout our lives. They may be cultural or familial ways of responding to conflict. Some of us might have been taught like a certain type of politeness, and there's a right way to ask for help, or things like that can make us more afraid in certain situations. Some of us respond to stress through fight, flight, or freeze. And noticing which of those reactions comes up for us can then help us to, move through that and process it. I think we could spend hours kind of unpacking those first responses, but I just wanted to take that moment to look at them quickly. So thank you all. And several of you mentioned doing that. What capacity do I have? Right? I kind of told you had a long day. A lot of us might be tired, things like that. So checking in on your capacity is, again, important. It's important so that we're there for the long haul, so that we don't overpromise things, so that we show up in the ways that we mean to and intend to. So some questions that you might ask when you're checking in on your own capacity are things like, what kind of time do you have? I have 5 minutes before I have to be out the door to pick up the kids. So there's a clear deadline here, or I have hours. What energy do you have? Is there something that you can do to increase your capacity? Sometimes that might be, I need to get food while I go over to your house, or I need to talk on the phone while I'm moving around to get more energy. Different stuff like that. Drink some water. And often we'll come back to this. What are two options that you can offer? That can be really helpful in terms of thinking about your own capacity, so that you're not committing to stuff that you can't do or don't want to do or will feel resentful for. If you can think about these are some choices, and then that the person you're working with or the people can do that empowerment based work of making a decision, and saying, yes, those choices work for me, or no, that doesn't. Those are a couple ways, just briefly, to assess your capacity. And I think y'all named some other ones in all of those chat answers, but feel free to add additional comments you have about how you do this work, because I think that helps all of us to do that self-awareness. And sometimes this feels really hard. So we care, but boundaries can help us, and it helps other people. We help by modeling boundaries for folks, showing them that it's okay to say no, and by letting someone know that we're genuinely supported. I personally love it when people tell me no, because then I can trust their yeses a lot more. If I know that somebody will tell me when something doesn't work, and when they don't like something, then when they tell me, yes, I can do this thing, I'm like, okay, you would tell me otherwise. So those are just a couple of the ways that boundaries help us. And they also help, I'm seeing folks talk about work in the chat, for those of us who are advocates or other types of helping professionals, really being able to know that your job's not saving people, it's being a support, and it's being there to help, can be really critical in taking care of ourselves over the long term too. Because though we're looking at a crisis, they often feel short term. Many crises are long term, or come repeatedly over time. So we're going to kind of focus on, when we get to specific tips, a couple different types of crisis, but I do recognize that your crisis can be a whole bunch of different things, and it has different meaning to different people. Right. So I'm not going to give you a standardized definition, but what we're kind of looking at are what the person in crisis identifies as a crisis, or a lot of other people might identify as a crisis, and things contribute to that, right? So something could seem small to us as an outsider if we're not in that same crisis, but it's actually not small to the person. And I really love this visual of a bucket, and each of these different things in our lives is adding to what's inside the bucket until it gets to the point that it overflows, right? So that could be trauma. It could be current trauma. It could be past trauma, stress, loss of any kind, loss of a relationship, housing a loved one, loss of a sense of safety, a challenge or obstacle in our lives, overstimulation, understimulation. Those affect different people differently. Lack of sleep, hunger, our physical pain, like what our body needs, all of these things add to the bucket until it overflows. And what it takes for each person to get to that overflow point is going to be different. So the thing that spills the bucket may look to an outsider like it's small, but we have to recognize everything else that was already in there. And this tap, I want to keep in mind, as something we'll look at later, there's ways that we can kind of lower what's in the bucket so that when things get added in, it's still less likely to spill over. So that'll be what we talk about later. And you have this question in the chat: is this similar to the pyramid of basic needs? And it's, I think these concepts kind of fit together for me. If our basic needs aren't met, if we don't have safe housing, if we don't have food, if we don't have supportive people in our lives, that could be stuff that's added to the bucket. The stress, the lack of security, the unsafety that we're experiencing are all being added to the bucket. Or it might mean, we have a smaller bucket, kind of whatever visual works for you there. It's a great question. So when crisis comes up, there are kind of two things that we want to move forward when we're working with people. The big themes of tonight are going to be safety and support. But what does safety mean? So physical safety is one aspect. If you're in person with somebody, or you're able to talk to communicate with somebody about their physical environment, or someone's able to get to them, some of the things to look for, different threats to somebody's physical safety. That could be other people, it could be hazards. The presence of weapons can really increase the danger of a situation. Signs of impending or past physical struggle might be something that you notice. If the crisis might be that you heard some people yelling, right? And we go to see what's happening. Are there signs of stuff knocked over that could tell you that there was possibly physical violence? Also, to look for physical safety, it can be really helpful to be mindful of things like, where are the exits? How can you move yourself towards somewhere safer? And how can you help the person in crisis move towards somewhere safer? And sometimes that's leaving the physical space that they're in, or being able to get out of it to go somewhere else. Here, keep in mind, try not to block the exits for the person. If someone's in crisis, blocking them from an exit can make them even more stressed out and overwhelmed. And then look for opportunities for privacy. If you're not already in a more private location, you're out in public, you're in a crowded room or something like that, is there a place where you and the person or people in crisis can move that's maybe quieter and more private, so that it's easier to talk through what's going on and start doing that process of de-escalation? And then emotional safety is another kind of safety that we want to look for. And things to think about there: what kind of harm, if any, is happening? What sort of feelings are being expressed? And what do you already know about the people involved? I saw some folks here mention being, advocates, or working in maybe a field of domestic or sexual violence. So you might be working with people that are new to you, that you don't have a lot of information out. We might be in the grocery store and there's a crisis. You don't know people. Often, and what we're really thinking about tonight is when it's folks in our community, friends, loved ones, and that information, what does this person care about? What upsets them? What calms and comforts them? That can really help me move with that person towards emotional safety. I have friends that find silence really scary and overwhelming because it's been weaponized against them in the past. I'm someone who likes silence. If you ask me a question, I need like 5 seconds before I can answer it. So knowing that about the two of us, we're able to think about our emotional safety better. And in the chat, see, had hard times de-escalating situations with threats to physical safety without yelling. I'd love more tools on that. And other folks who have tools and ideas, feel free to share. That I think is It's a long conversation. We might get to more of those here, but a couple things I think of are, it's going to depend on the situation. Are If it's a conflict where two people are already loud, sometimes we may need to be slightly louder, not necessarily yelling, but in order to be heard at all. But often, if we're quieter than someone else is, in mannerisms and emotion and things like that, it can help gradually step down the calmness. So, not yelling as loud as they are. In other situations, if it's like strangers and street harassment, there are definitely different ideas depending on your identity, the identity of the person who's being harassed, of ways that people are more likely to respond to for help. But having a body, if the person being threatened can have a body position showing like, I don't know you, I'm in danger, help, that can sometimes get additional people to pay attention to it. Doesn't necessarily de-escalate the threat, but can bring more help into it. Great. And we have also in the chat, you can model calmness and control of emotions. So bringing that energy into the space, people will often shift to meet you there. Those are a couple things that can help, and we'll keep an eye out for more as we keep going. So our goals, right, are increasing support and safety. Many crises that we talk about, these are kind of our first de-escalation tools, or how can we be there to be support, to let people know that they're not alone in having to handle this, that they are listened to and heard, and how can we either help the person to recognize that this place is safer for them, or how can we make the place safer for them? So increasing support and safety. These tools are, going back to that image of a bucket, these tools help us be the tap on the bucket that might lower some of the stuff that's in it, and give some release. No, there's not like one quick fix that solves all things. Often we have to kind of have lots of different strategies. So like the modeling calmness and control of emotions can be one part of it, but then we have to add on other things, and each of these release a little bit of the stress of the crisis. There's a picture of cats on this slide because I find them calming and lovely, and I know several of y'all mentioned that you did too. So our first big way to increase support is by being present and making space, spending time together. So thinking back to the missed phone calls and text messages, let's say you do reach your friend and they're in an emotional crisis. Being present with them, can it be, let's talk on the phone for a half hour? I can come to your house or the coffee shop where you are. Can you be there? That's one step. And that helps for a ton of reasons. One, it can be really emotionally supportive. And two, it can help with physical safety. If they are in danger, from the environment, or if they're thinking of hurting themselves or killing themselves, having someone else physically around can be a good distraction for that. It can give some time and space. Some people find distractions really great when they're in a crisis. It can shift the thinking to focus on something else. So if I am stuck in a feeling, if somebody can distract me, show me a silly video, put on Steven Universe or something, that might help give my brain a break from the crisis. Some people are not going to like distractions and going to need kind of focused time to focus on what they're feeling. So this is one of those cases where knowing the person and working with them, offering choices. Would you like to put on some cartoons, or is it more helpful to sit here quietly? Could be an option. Communicate your capacity. That's where that self-assessment comes in. What can I offer? I can bring you some soup, but I can only stay until 6 p.m. Let's, text message me throughout the day. I'm in a meeting from 1 to 2. So I want you to know ahead of time, I'm not going to answer during that time. Those types of things help communicate that you are really authentically there for the person. And they start knowing what to expect. So if y'all have heard of trauma-informed principles and trauma-informed care, one of them is transparency. And when we can be transparent about stuff like that, it helps show that we're trustworthy. And checking for consent as much as possible before we do things. Is it okay if I sit next to you on the couch? Is it okay if I put my hand on your back? Would you like a hug? Would you like a cup of tea? We're asking for people's consent. And recognizing that people might not open up right away or ever, and that's okay. Sometimes there's this pressure that folks have to explain everything and all of the feelings, and that's not helpful in every situation. You being there, even if somebody never shares why they're crying, still matters and makes a difference. It helps if you show that you're trustworthy. And you do that by being honest about what you're able to do, by following through on things you say you'll do, or you talking to people about that. And it helps to acknowledge their feelings, even if you don't hear stories underlying the feelings, even if they don't give words to all of those feelings. Acknowledging, I can see that this is really hard for you right now, can be a big help. I know personally, I've struggled with this in the past where I'm like, if I don't know what's wrong, what can I do? But there's a lot you can do. And just being with somebody can be a big part of that. Right. Another one is delay. So especially if the crisis is something that involves harm, physical harm or danger, delaying can help reduce the risk of serious harm. That might look like physically removing weapons or other things that are dangers. Having others physically available. You probably can't be there 24/7. The next slide's going to say this. It's a team effort. So, having multiple people being present with somebody in shifts, discuss safety options together. So again, you're not going to make choices for somebody else, but you can brainstorm what are some alternatives, what helps you with safety. Some things that might delay distractions. Let's eat a meal before we make any decisions. So that helps also. We saw that hunger adds to the bucket. So having food together. Did anyone else lose audio? Do y'all still have it? Okay, great. Suggesting things like, how about getting some sleep and we can make this decision tomorrow? Let's go for a walk first. Any of those sorts of things can give a delay. And sometimes that's the time somebody needs to get from a moment of you considering doing something that's serious harm, that could be to themselves or to others, and getting to a place that they're able to think about other options. Sometimes the alternatives and the delays are, not things that are as safe or wholesome as sleep and eating food. Somebody might find it really helpful to be intoxicated and be distracted for 8 hours. If somebody's already intoxicated, might be helpful to talk about, let's think this through when you're sober. Let's make a decision in the morning, things like that. So it's okay to really think through those questions. And then finally, it's a team effort. Something that often happens with loved ones when there's a crisis is they ask for you to not tell anybody else. Um, and and that can be really challenging because you do want to respect their boundaries and their confidentiality and their privacy. And also we know that caring for ourselves and each other is a team effort. None of us can do everything alone. um, so it's okay for you to ask for support. You can talk to friends or others, possibly without sharing details, but sharing that you're having a hard time. It's okay to say, let's call someone else before I leave. Who's one other person we can get here? um, or something like that, and helping the person who's in crisis to connect with others. So we have a question. There's several situations where I find myself apologizing more than once, and it got me in some trouble. Sometimes I need to remember not to overthink, overdo, or overstep someone's boundaries. Are there some tools to help with that? Yeah. And again, if other people have stuff to offer, because we're all different and the tools that help us will be different. Um, for myself, it's been a lot of practice of trying to think about what I'm actually apologizing for before I apologize. Um, and without knowing the specifics of this situation, I can think of times where I've just been like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And it's like, what am I sorry for? How can I name that one time and then work to change the behavior if it's something that needs to be changed? And if it's not, um, sometimes it's instead of saying sorry, it's saying thank you or showing appreciation. Instead of, I'm sorry I have to leave right now, saying I really appreciated the time that we got to spend together. And I'm grateful that someone else is going to be here with you for the next little bit. I look forward to the next time we'll connect. So shifting, it's fine that I had this boundary, and being grateful for it. And then other tools, the overthinking, overstepping someone's boundaries. Sometimes it's awkward, but it's like just checking in. And I've even asked, like, am I checking in too often? But really trying to open communication when you can. Um, and another spoiler for later is, one of the things that we can do is plan ahead with our loved ones and our community and think about, before there's a crisis, what do people like in crisis? And that way you kind of know some of people's boundaries ahead of time and what they like and what they don't like. Um, so that in that moment of crisis, you might have to do a little less checking in. So thanks for the questions. So we have another question for you. And you can answer in the Padlet again, or in the chat, whatever's easiest. What do you do to help increase support and safety for someone who's experiencing a crisis? So I named some big picture ideas. What are your ideas? What are the tools you use? And Caleb, once they start coming in, again, for the Padlet, you can, yeah, y'all got it. You can change which question you're answering here at the bottom or scroll down to it.
Someone in the chat said, be present, being present. Share links to memes relevant to their circumstance or mood. Those close to me and I have a system. Do you want to be distracted? Do you need someone to listen? Or do you just need support, emotional or physical, in this moment? Physically draw or write out their inner and outer resources with them. I listen until it's clear they're done talking. Be sure not to interrupt. I listen and make sure they feel heard. in the chat too. A tool I like is eye contact when it feels well received as a nonverbal way of saying, I see you, being calm, making sure they know that you are there, even if it's just to sit with them in silence. Text to check in, create a safety plan with coping skills and who their support people are. Plan exactly where the safety plan will be.
Great. Yeah. So again, some themes are that checking in of what do you need right now and ways to offer options. Do you want to listen or do you want to problem solve? Do you want a distraction? These are all great things also that you can talk with people ahead of time about, especially if it's something that feels weird or unusual to the people you're thinking of when you think of this training. To do that during a crisis, if you plan ahead or you model this question ahead of time, it can really help out. And then showing that you're present, and we do that in so many different ways. Some of us do that through eye contact. Some of us do that with our language. You specifically naming, I'm here with you. That's great if you're over the phone or text. When someone's not seeing you. Small comforts. Absolutely. Great. And then thinking through like those longer term options of safety planning, what they might need over time. Great. And as one person says in the chat, we can do all those things with kids too. Love it. We are going to get, one person asked if we're going to get to some specific examples. And we will in just a second. I'm looking through the chat. There's one we wanted to go back to. If I can find it. Caleb, do you see the comment about offering distraction or a third option?
I'm also looking for that. Let's see.
Here it is. Do you want to be distracted? Do you need someone to listen, or do you just need support, emotional or physical? And again, we can send out, this list to people. And if you go to the Padlet, you're also able to scroll, but I know not everybody's got that. All right. So shifting into getting a bit more specific, panic attacks is one of the types of crisis that we'll talk about. So there's some really excellent, much more in-depth resources, and Caleb sharing some of them in the chat. I'll just shout out Project Let's is a good organization, and their tools are what these slides are drawn from. They also really involve people with lived and direct experiences in creating all of their tools. So this is stuff that folks who have panic attacks have said is helpful. So if you're with someone currently having a panic attack, again, that calm and presence. So you're modeling the energy level of patience, of calmness, and that might take you doing a moment to ground yourself. Think back to your comfort object or smell or sense. Take a deep breath yourself, whatever helps you to do that. Reminding the person of what is happening. So specifically, folks have said that somebody saying, you're having a panic attack, I'm here with you. You are breathing. We're going to breathe together. That can be really helpful. You want to be sure the wording is compassionate and not dismissive. So avoid things like it's just a panic attack or don't worry or things like that, because for the person, it's very worrying and upsetting. And so naming a panic attack without minimizing it or acting like it's no big deal is important. If the person is able to engage in a discussion, that can be helpful. A panic attack can feel like you cannot breathe for some people. But if you can talk, you can breathe. So that folks have said that's helpful for them. If the person is having trouble breathing, helping model breathing together. So exhaling slowly, encouraging them to breathe in through the nose, and even physically noticing their breathing if they feel comfortable with touch. So putting their hands on their stomach to feel the breaths come in and out, or chest, wherever they feel comfortable, can be helpful. Breathing and noticing our breaths and touching our bodies can be hard for a lot of trans and non-binary folks. So again, this is about providing choice and options, but if that's something that feels good for them. If they're able, again, to share with you any of what's going on, ask what could help them to feel safer and then help to get it. Sometimes the panic attack is happening for a reason. The situation we are in does not feel safe or is not safe, and I need help getting out of here. We need to leave the place we're in. I need to be covered up completely so I can't see anything around me. I need the lights off or on. Things like that can help. So making the physical environment more safe for them. Right. I see in the chat also, take a deep breath with me. Again, that this idea of doing the thing with them. So you're not just telling someone to breathe, you're together in this weird breathing, can be really helpful. Another in the chat we're also getting is someone can't breathe or move or feels like they can't breathe. Sometimes, if you've tried this, breathing's not helping, shift their focus away to something else. Find something red in the room, find something blue in the room. Because for some people, focusing on the breathing can really help, because you're like, yes, I am breathing. Here's how it's going. Other times it's going to make the panic worse. So shifting attention can be helpful. With any crisis, there's not one perfect solution that fits for everyone, and one solution every time. So sometimes we have to try different things. Those are great tips. Thank you all. Next, we're going to talk about suicide. So again, I know thinking about suicide can be especially hard for some folks. You'll get the slides, they'll get the recording. The first thing that I want to say is it's okay to talk about suicide, specifically if you're with somebody, if somebody is in crisis and it sounds like they might be thinking about killing themselves, you can ask directly. And you want to do so in a way that conveys that you're not judging them for the answer, that there's no right or wrong answer, that you're present with them through that. There is a big difference between active thoughts about suicide and passive thoughts. A lot of people have thoughts of wishing to die or wanting to be dead at some point. And it can be helpful for folks to be able to name that and say that out loud, and talk it through and notice the distinction, between those thoughts and I am actively making a plan to end my life. Either way, ask directly about it. Try and be as calm as you can be. And again, ask without assuming that there's a right or wrong answer. Are you thinking about killing yourself? If you're in a position of power, if you're an advocate, crisis line worker, anyone else, a teacher over that person, even your friends, sometimes it can be really helpful to tell why you're asking, and what you're going to do with the information. A lot of people are afraid that either police or hospitals will be called and they'll be involuntarily committed or have some other kind of involuntary intervention. And those can actually cause even more harm a lot of the time. So letting people know what will happen if they say yes can help them to give you a yes if that's the case. If they do say yes, stay present. Talk about the feelings and talk about what's behind those feelings. There's often things that led up to this point, and getting a chance to express those may help de-escalate the crisis for somebody. Even if someone's not thinking about suicide, naming suicide lets people know that you're okay to talk to about suicide. So it might help them in the future. It might help them just know, like, this isn't a feeling I have to have alone. So again, be direct, compassionate, and listen. Let people know what you'll do with the information. And it is okay to talk about. I think a really, really common fear is that if I name suicide first, I'm going to put the idea in someone's head, and that's not true. You're actually creating the space to have a conversation that can be helpful. There are a lot of resources for external help. So your presence, your continued support, your listening is really important. And often people want additional help or help that you might not be able to provide. Maybe it's at someone to talk to at 3 a.m. Maybe it's easier to talk to a stranger. 988 is the national number for suicide and crisis hotlines. And it routes to a whole bunch of different agencies. Some of them, many of them may call for intervention. So they may bring police to your home, or other types of government into your home. And that's not always safe, especially for trans and non-binary folks. That's not always safe for survivors of violence. So these numbers listed are some alternatives to 988. And Caleb shared in the chat, we have a kind of longer article that talks about active rescue and the possibilities of harm for them. So really, if you have a relationship with somebody, being able to talk through what it is they want to have happen, when they want it to happen, what they're worried about, can be super helpful. If somebody does want to go, to a hospital or something like that, if it's possible to go with them rather than having people come to the home, that might be a safer option. If you do know that, police or active rescue are coming to the home, if you're able to do things to make that safer, have someone else there who can be calm, make sure any weapons are put away, things like that can also help reduce harm. Again, that's like the short version of what could be really, really long conversations about how we can kind of navigate those. I just do want everyone to know that there's additional support out there.
There's a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Can we clarify a bit between suicidal thoughts versus the suicidal thoughts that would merit 911 intervention?
Yeah, I think this, again, there's not a clear line, and 911 intervention can create additional challenges, right? We know that when people with guns show up at a house or a home, it increases the chance that guns will be used. And unfortunately, that's what happens a lot when we call 911. And sometimes even when we call 988, they then call 911. I can't say for you, though, when it is that, you may be in a situation where that's the only option. And hopefully, what we can do over time. Sorry, interpreters froze again. Okay, I think we're back. So what we would do over time is help build up more and more community supports and more other resources, so that we had emergency response options that weren't armed. However, with your community members, with your loved ones, you may need to make the decisions about what feels safest for them. I hope that's an answer to your question, or the start of an answer. And I know somebody asked about a similar thing to this earlier. Our last kind of set of specific tools is when someone's experience of reality is really different from ours, or what's sometimes called consensus reality, which is like the reality of most people. And there's a lot of different reasons that could happen. So this includes things like hearing voices that other people don't hear, seeing things, feeling physical sensations that other people don't feel, hallucinations. One important thing to recognize is that not all of these experiences are automatically dangerous or harmful, right? And that can be a big shift to make. I know I grew up in a culture that really stigmatized people having different perceptions of reality. So again, the links in the chat are from people with lived experiences of this, and give even more in-depth insight into their experiences and what coping strategies help. So I really encourage people to get way more in-depth training. But some of the questions are, how can we help the person navigate the world more safely? And how do we kind of join with them in a way that creates support? So I don't have to tell them necessarily like, no, you're wrong, that's not happening. There's no other voices, but instead I can listen without judgment to what they're experiencing. I can show interest and care. And I can also recognize that what else could be making this more stressful? Again, focusing on folks who hear voices, that some people say like it doesn't bother them most of the time, but then sometimes it does. Sometimes the voices start saying things that are mean or scary. Are there stresses that make that more likely to happen that we can help relieve? If the person's not kind of present to their physical environment, how can I help them get to somewhere that's safe? Whether it's around where they're living or getting them home or things like that. And long-term, how do we explore coping mechanisms that, again, help decrease the crisis caused by these? And these are similar things, disconnect from reality also includes things like somebody's having a bad trip, right? Or things like that. These are ways that we do, whether the disconnect is going to be short, we know it'll end when you're sober, or whether we don't know when it's going to end. We can provide these supports. All right, we've got half an hour left. So this is my breathing break picture. If you need to fan yourself off, you can, or stretch. One of my favorite I like breathing activities that are silly. So one of my favorite is, if you remember when you blow up a balloon, it gets bigger. And if you don't tie a knot in it and let go, kind of like zooms across the room in this like spluttery motion. So join me if you want. You breathe in like a balloon, and then you're going to release and splutter around. If you feel like getting up and running around your room and doing it, you can, but breathe in and blow up the balloon, and then out and splutter. All right. I hope folks, I just woke up the dog doing that. Sorry. I hope folks are able to take a short breath or break in whatever way felt good for you. So there's a few other situations that I want to talk about here. And also, thank you all for everyone who's asked questions in the chat. As we get into the last half hour, keep adding your questions in so that, they're there and we can make sure they get answered, or we get a plan for answering them. So a lot of the crisis I've talked about so far is often like one person is in a crisis. That is not that's not the world I live in. I don't think that's the world any of y'all live in. We are all constantly impacted by our loved ones, by the world we exist in, by all of the hate and the violence and the stuff that's in the air. So I I want to just take a moment to acknowledge that a lot of the times when we deal with crisis, we're also dealing with crisis, and we also have a lot of other people in our lives dealing with crisis. So you are not a burden. Asking for help, asking for support does not make anyone a burden. We all have that right. And the way that we take care of each other is so beautiful and wonderful. And it's something that we do that can make our lives better. It is okay to ask for help. It's okay to be asked for help. Another way that we can get support when our whole community is impacted, or when lots of people are impacted by different things, is to share connections. Y'all have been doing that the past hour, sharing ideas and tips and resources and similar things that you find comfort in. So sharing those connections with each other can help us carry what we're carrying together, and take time to feel in whatever ways are safe and good for you. It might be naming what you're feeling for a second. It might be, I saw someone share, their comfort is in the shower. It might just be noticing sensations, including pleasant ones. That can really help us to just stay present and stay with each other. And helps us to break the isolation that a lot of these crisis and trauma can really cause. Another big thing we want to consider is that sometimes it's the material conditions of people's lives that need to change. So all of the listening and the support in the world does not build a house. And we know for trans and non-binary communities, especially, there's so many material needs, healthcare, food, housing, that we need. And so part of our work sometimes in de-escalating a crisis, in dealing with crisis, is to help get those needs met. And that's going to depend on your capacity and what the need is. We do that through mutual aid efforts that help make sure that resources get redistributed. We do that through bigger nonprofit organizations and food banks and low income housing and things like that. We do that through our advocacy efforts that change policies. But recognizing that often people need material conditions as well as the emotional support and coping mechanisms and things like that. Other things, being there for the long haul. So again, as we're talking about our community members, our friends and family and loved ones, really thinking through that crisis isn't just an hour, a day, a week. Sometimes it's our lives, or it's something that happens over and over in our lives. How do we want to be in people's lives over time? Is me setting a boundary now going to help me stay in good relationship with you for the next 3 years, the next 30 years? Then great. Let me set that boundary now, even if it feels, hard to do. Other things, you are really kind of shifting that focus, that way that we think about how we care for each other, naming and recognizing that we can care for each other. Feel free to add your stuff in the chat too. I'm thinking several people said they have these conversations with friends ahead of time about, do you want advice? Do you want me to listen? So talking to people about what they want can help us build those long-term relationships. And that goes to building community. Um, we can connect with people before there's a crisis to help us have better ideas about how to respond when there is a crisis, and also to how was I going to end that sentence? I have no idea. Okay. So what Caleb just shared in the chat is a bunch of different examples of worksheets and ideas that you can use to build community before there's a crisis. So pod mapping is one idea, and that was particularly created by the Bay Area Transformative Justice Coalition, I believe is what the C stands for. And it's ways to think about like who's your people, and really drawing out on a worksheet. This is who I'm connected to, and this is who I would want involved if something was happening. Pod mapping specifically came about in thinking about how do we respond to intimate partner violence or sexual violence? How do we create accountability within our communities? But we can use it for other types of crisis and support too, to really think about those supporters ahead of time. And they'll be different in different situations. There's stuff you want some people to help with, and you know someone else is good for something else. Like I strongly believe in food and people being fed and feeding people. I am the wrong person to bring a casserole to your house if you are hungry. Like, I just can't get it together. But if you need me to listen, I'm there. And that would be a good thing to know on your pod mapping worksheet. There's also a couple other examples of Google Docs that really look into more particulars of like, how do we care for each other and what kind of care do we want? And so these are great things to do with, the people you're close to. You can do with, your partners, with your family members, with your friend group, with, any group of people. So those are really tangible tools to have these conversations ahead of time that we wanted to share with you. And then that last link, these questions are inspired by this Instagram post, is about like conversation starters. So some of us, I didn't grow up like talking about feelings and mental health. And that's a common experience that I hear, is that like these are weird, different conversations than we're used to. So here are some conversation starters. The Instagram link has some kind of focus for therapists, and I shifted the language a bit to be community focused. But how do you want to be cared for? What makes you feel safe to navigate conflict or crisis? How does our relationship feel to you? How can I support your connection with others or with community? I love these last two. Relationship isn't just like our dating relationships. Ask your friends, ask your neighbor, how's this working out? Where's there room for improvement? What do you love about it? And then this last one really invites that in, like, we're going to try and break isolation and have more connection. And so our kind of reminders here are, we want to help the person feel heard. And I think a lot of the crises that I've been navigating in recent years have been related to conflicts and helping people figure out how to deal with conflicts. And feeling heard is often such a key part of a conflict or disagreement. And it's true also for a lot of other crises. Slowing down, so taking that time to check in with yourself, check in with the other person, notice where you might be making assumptions or missing stuff can be really helpful. Move towards safety, which we talked about. Lean into curiosity. Again, you're trying to avoid those assumptions, but asking questions, inviting a conversation. How does that feel for you? What's coming up for you? taking care of those basic needs, and the structural needs work together, right? You're not jumping in with all the answers, but you're co-creating a plan, an idea, whether it's, the right in the moment, what kind of tea do you want, or it's like long term, how are we going to work towards safety, and then plan ahead. And my two kind of last things, and then I will get to questions and comments and stuff in the chat. Care can be joyful and beautiful and easy. It's not always. Sometimes it's hard. The dominant idea, I feel like, in the United States is that care is hard, right? But it's not always that way. It can be really beautiful and loving. It can be amazing to help somebody, you know, get access to a bathroom, to make a meal with somebody, to lie on the couch together, while they're experiencing a bad trip, like whatever it is, those things can be part of this loving, joyful world that we create together. And you can't do everything, but you can do something. So thinking about what are my skill sets, what do I have to offer in this moment, and what's that something that I can do? Is it, I can't call you back, but I can text our mutual friend and ask them to call you. I cannot make you a casserole, but I can watch Steven Universe with you. All those sorts of things are okay, and that you don't have to do it all, because it's going to be a team effort. And sometimes it takes a while to build up that team. It can feel really isolating right now. So when an acute crisis feels over, that moment, still stay connected with people. Follow up with them, check in later that day, next week, next month, and take care of yourself. No matter how things go with a crisis, taking that time to notice how you're doing, to release some of the stuff in your bucket so that your bucket doesn't overflow, can be really, really beneficial to your long-term well-being, your relationship with that person, that people, those community that are in crisis, and to you being here and being a caring person. Caleb, what's our chat and Q&A looking like?
I'm not seeing, there was a question about the webinar being recorded, which I think
Okay.
might be answered. And then I haven't seen other questions in the chat unless I'm missing. So
There was one I might have missed. Sorry, y'all. The great thing about a very active chat. Okay, we've got a few minutes. If you have questions that we haven't answered, please put them in there. Wasn't sure if we'd have time to get to it, but let's answer this third question in the Padlet. How can you take care of yourself while caring for others? So you can answer it in the Padlet, which I'll show, or you can answer it in the chat. What's something you do to take care of yourself while caring for others? And y'all's answers honestly are helping all of us out, because they give all of us ideas on what we can do. Like remembering to eat, huge one.
cat videos on TikTok. Sleep. Sometimes I hold pressure against my chest or stomach while supporting others to help ease anxiety. Sleep, or time alone as possible. Eat, sleep, DBT. Having my dog here with me to calm me helps me be calm for others. Leaving work at work and home at home.
Yeah.
Taking breaks, listening to music. Stay connected to source energy. Being in nature.
Yeah. I'm seeing also connecting with others, so regrounding while respecting privacy. Great reminder. Step away and smoke if I know it's coming, right? If you're able to plan ahead or situation, what helps you get calm before then? These are lovely. Thank you all. All right. So great. We have one question I saw in the chat, which is, do you have tips for how to handle someone who is becoming threatening or violent, specifically for those who are advocates and want to help? So part of me is like, that's a huge other webinar and training. I think in some ways, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is going to be kind of similar across the board. So depending how much time you have, as a threat might be escalating, I sorry, y'all. I don't know if you could hear that. As it's escalating, if it's someone like someone you're working with already, you may know stuff about them. You may be able to talk about that, approaching with calm while being mindful of your own physical safety, and trying to shift to can you tell me what's going on here? I'm here. I'm listening, and doing that in a calm way to get the focus away from the physical violence, the physical threat, onto let's look at what's going on for you. I can see you're really stressed or upset, whatever the word is, and then being able to move towards that place of listening. There is going to be there's a huge range of what that could be. When you think about your self safety, if violence is already happening, you're going to be making different decisions about how you handle that and like where you physically position yourself than if it's like a verbal threat towards violence, but there's no weapons or things like that. Okay, so an answer about the physical safety. We had a comment in the chat of establishing boundaries, giving options again. So it's taking those ideas we talked about and applying it to that situation. Sometimes it's possible to make a request like, I'm here and I want to listen. Can we move out of the kitchen? Can you move away from the weapon while we do that? And really, if you're in person, which I'm assuming you are in this case, being aware of your physical body language. That's hard because people interpret things differently, but having your hands, you can't see them if they're down, but having them open so that people can tell you're not holding anything. And ideally, like maybe in a lower position so it doesn't look like I'm about to engage in violence, and get other people involved too. So if you're advocates, I did conflict de-escalation trainings at shelters, like see if you can get someone else there. Great. So I'm going to share, as Caleb, you can help me and see if there's other questions and stuff we didn't get to. Do want to share a few resources while we're all still together. So Forge, again, this is us. We've got lots of social media. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, where this recording will be, as well as tons of other recordings. Then our website is forgeforward.org. We also run a blog, transsurvivors.com. So there's a lot of great resources there. My name again is Emile Rudisell. I forgot to tell you my pronouns are they and them. And this is my email. So feel free to follow up with, Forge as a group. We've got an amazing team, or myself. And then in addition to all the links in the chat that we can send out to you, the big resources that I recommend. Project Let's does lots of mental health resources. Again, they really focus on creating resources with people with lived experiences. Um, the Trevor Project has, in addition, to their hotlines and support lines that y'all may be familiar with, they have written materials on their website too, including, facts and statistics, as well as kind of supportive information and things like how to help cope with anxiety and stress. Trevor Project is generally focused on younger folks. Equality Texas put out a mental health toolkit. It's again mostly focused on younger folks and the support that adults can provide to them, but the tips are still really great for all ages. Trans Survivor blog, that's us at Forge. I just wanted to really highlight it because there's a lot of different years of articles. Some are from a more personal perspective, so it can help to, again, increase that connection to hear from other survivors about their perspectives. There's some that are written more intended for like community members or providers, and it's a whole huge range of topics. So we've got a lot of stuff related to trauma, to being survivors, to mental health, and all sorts of other things there. I encourage folks to check out. And that's our thank you slide. Thank you all so much. And the last link in the chat is an evaluation. We love your feedback. It helps us know what we're doing great and what else you want to see from us and what we could do better. So please fill out the evaluation, and we'll get you, follow-up materials in the next couple days. I know I greatly appreciated all of the ways that y'all contributed tonight and chat and Padlet, and being present and listening. So thank you so much for the ways that you take care of yourselves and your communities, and the ways that you took care of each other tonight by sharing your ideas and thoughts and questions. We appreciate y'all, and have a great rest of your night. You'll stay on for just a minute or two to see if there's last questions, but otherwise y'all are free to head out. Have a good evening. Thank you so much.